Do you ever have an emotional reaction that feels too big for the situation? A surge of panic over a small mistake at work, a wave of shame from a minor criticism, a fit of anger that seems to come from nowhere? What if I told you that in those moments, it is not the adult you who is reacting, but a small, unheard child who lives inside of you? A child still carrying a wound from long ago. Are you ready to finally meet them? Your biggest character flaws, your procrastination, your neediness, your fear of abandonment are not flaws at all. They are the brilliant, outdated survival strategies of your inner child. This part of you is not a problem to be fixed. It is a time traveler, stuck in a moment of pain, desperately trying to protect you from being hurt again in the only way it knows how. In this gentle and illuminating journey, inspired by the work of Carl Jung, we will not blame the past. We will seek to understand it. We will explore the concept of the original wound and how your childhood still affects you today. And you will learn the first compassionate steps to recognize the presence of this child within. This is a profound and essential part of shadow work. It is the act of turning towards the most vulnerable part of your unconscious. This is not about regression. It is about rescue. And it is the beginning of profound self-compassion.
To understand the inner child, we must first understand that the psyche does not perceive time in a linear way. There is a part of you that did not age, a part that is not a memory, but a living, breathing, autonomous presence within your current reality. This is the child who never leaves. Carl Jung called this the archetype of the divine child. It is the part of us that holds our original self, our capacity for wonder, for joy, for creativity, for vulnerability. But it is also the part of our psyche that carries the emotional imprints of our childhood experiences, both good and bad. It is a time capsule of feeling. Think of it this way. When a child experiences a moment of overwhelming emotion, fear, shame, loneliness, and there is no safe, attuned adult presence to help them process it, that emotion does not simply disappear. It becomes frozen in time. A part of the child's psyche gets stuck at that age, forever replaying that moment, carrying that wound. And that wounded child continues to live inside the adult you have become. It does not speak in the language of adult logic. It speaks in the language of raw, unfiltered emotion and powerful, outdated survival strategies. Let me tell you about Sarah, the 40-year-old human resources manager we met, the peacemaker. On the surface, she was a successful, competent adult. But she had a crippling fear of conflict. Even a slightly raised voice in a meeting would send a jolt of panic through her body. Her heart would race, her palms would sweat. It was an adult body having a child's reaction. Because in those moments, it was not the 40-year-old manager who was present. It was the 6-year-old girl frozen in time, hiding in her bedroom, listening to her parents fight. That little girl learned a brilliant survival strategy. If I'm quiet, if I am good, if I make no trouble, I will be safe. And now, 34 years later, that same little girl was still running the show, driving Sarah to seek peace at any cost, even the cost of her own truth and well-being. This is the heart of the matter. The relentless drive for achievement that we have spoken of, the desperate need to build a perfect persona, is very often the adult's attempt to finally give the inner child what it never had. If the child felt unseen, the adult seeks fame. If the child felt powerless, the adult seeks control and success. If the child felt unworthy, the adult seeks constant validation. But it never works, because you cannot heal a childhood wound with an adult achievement. You cannot fill an internal void of love with external validation. The emptiness that follows success is the sound of the inner child, still hungry, still scared, still waiting. The first step in this profound journey of shadow work is not to fix the child. It is not to silence the child. It is simply to find them, to recognize their presence, and to begin to understand their story. This story is what we call the original wound. It is rarely a single, dramatic, big T trauma. More often, it is a subtle, pervasive, small t emotional dynamic, a core belief that was formed in the quiet, repeated moments of your childhood, a story you have been living out unconsciously ever since. Psychologists have identified many of these core stories, but they often fall into 5 main categories. The 5 original wounds. As I name them, I invite you not to analyze, but to feel. Which of these stories resonates like an old, familiar song in your own soul? First, there is the wound of abandonment. The core belief is, I am not safe. People will always leave me. I must cling to them to survive. Second, the wound of rejection. The core belief, I am unworthy. There is something fundamentally wrong with me. I must be perfect to be loved. Third, the wound of humiliation. The core belief, I am shameful. I am bad. I must hide my true self to avoid judgment. Fourth, the wound of betrayal. The core belief, I cannot trust others. The world is unpredictable. I must be in control at all times. And fifth, the wound of injustice. The core belief, the world is unfair. My efforts don't matter. It's hopeless to even try. Pause here for a moment. Take a breath. Which of these stories whispers your name? You don't need to share it. Just acknowledge it silently to yourself. This acknowledgement is the first brave step of coming home. Because once you know the name of the story, you can begin to see how it has written every chapter of your life. And you realize you are not the story. You are the one who can learn to write a new ending. Once you know the name of your original wound, the world begins to look different. You start to see the ghost in your own machine. And this is where the great reframing begins. This is where we move from judgment to compassion. Here is the most counterintuitive and liberating truth of this work. Your biggest adult flaws are not flaws at all. They are the brilliant, outdated survival strategies of your inner child. They are not who you are. They are what your inner child does to feel safe, to prevent the original wound from ever being touched again. Let's connect the wounds to the baffling adult behaviors they create. This is where the aha moments live. This is where you finally understand yourself. If your wound is abandonment, your inner child's strategy is to never be left alone again. As an adult, this can manifest as clingy, needy behavior in relationships, an inability to enjoy your own solitude. Or, on the flip side, it can manifest as avoiding intimacy altogether, because the child believes, if I don't let anyone get close, I can never be abandoned. Your adult self is not needy or avoidant. Your inner child is just terrified of being left. If your wound is rejection, the child's strategy is to become so perfect, so helpful, so agreeable that no one could possibly reject them. This is the root of chronic people-pleasing, of being unable to say no, of having a crippling fear of criticism. Let's think of Chloe, our nurse. Her wound is rejection. She grew up feeling she was never quite good enough. So her inner child created the perfect helper strategy. As an adult, this makes her a wonderful, dedicated nurse. But it also leads to her burnout, her resentment, her inability to care for herself. Her people-pleasing is not a character flaw. It is the desperate, lifelong performance of a little girl singing for the supper of acceptance. Pause here for a moment. Which of these strategies feels most familiar to you? The clinging? The pleasing? The avoiding? You don't need to judge it. Just notice it with a little more compassion now. If you feel comfortable, share which strategy you recognize in the comments below. Let's continue. If your wound is humiliation, the child's strategy is to become invisible, to hide. As an adult, this can manifest as extreme shyness, a fear of public speaking, a tendency to downplay your own achievements, or to self-sabotage right before a moment of success. Why? Because success brings visibility, and visibility to that wounded child feels dangerous. It feels like an invitation to be shamed. If your wound is betrayal, the child's strategy is to trust no one and to control everything. As an adult, this can manifest as micromanagement, jealousy, an inability to delegate, a constant need to check up on your partner or your colleagues. You are not a control freak. Your inner child is a terrified general trying to manage a world it believes is fundamentally untrustworthy. The beating heart of this wound is the deep, painful memory of a promise being broken. For a man I worked with, David, it was the memory of his father promising to come to his baseball game and never showing up. That single moment created a lifelong strategy of self-reliance so rigid he couldn't let anyone in. His control issues weren't a flaw. They were a fortress built around a little boy's broken heart. Finally, if your wound is injustice, the child's strategy can be one of cynical resignation. Why bother trying? It's all rigged anyway. As an adult, this can manifest as chronic procrastination, learned helplessness, a difficulty finishing projects, a pervasive feeling that your efforts will never be recognized or rewarded. You are not lazy. Your inner child is a disillusioned idealist who learned too early that the world is not always fair. Do you see the pattern? These behaviors, these so-called flaws, are not you. They are the armor your inner child is still wearing. They are brilliant adaptations to a world that no longer exists. And the first step to helping the child take off the armor is to stop attacking them for wearing it. It is to finally understand, with a compassion that can break your own heart, why they felt they had to put it on. This understanding is the beginning of the end of your internal war. Now that you understand that your baffling adult behaviors are not flaws, but the echoes of a child's pain, the war can stop. The self-judgment can begin to soften, and a new journey can begin. Not a journey of fixing, but of finding. not of changing, but of connecting. The work of healing the inner child is a long and sacred path, and we will explore it more deeply. But it does not begin with a grand technique. It begins with a simple, profound act. The act of listening, of signaling to that lost, lonely part of you, I am here now, and I see you. So how do we begin this path of discovery? How do we start to listen for the whispers of this time traveler within? Here are 3 gentle, contemplative practices you can begin today. The first practice is what I call the trigger as a time machine. We spoke of those moments when your emotional reaction feels too big for the situation. That is your clue. That is the time machine activating. In those moments, the wounded child has taken the driver's seat. The practice is to notice this with curiosity, not panic. When you feel that surge of overwhelming emotion, gently pause, take a breath, and ask yourself one simple question. How old do I feel right now? The answer that comes to your mind may surprise you with its specificity. You are a 45-year-old executive, but in that moment of being criticized by your boss, you suddenly feel 8. You are a 38-year-old parent, but when your child has a tantrum, you feel 5. That number is not random. It is the age of the child who is currently running your emotional system. Simply noticing this age without judgment is a powerful act of de-identification. You are not the overwhelmed 8-year-old. You are the adult who is now aware of the overwhelmed 8-year-old within you. This creates a space. And in that space, healing can begin. The second practice is the photo meditation. This is an act of building an empathetic bridge to your past self. Find a photograph of yourself as a child. If you can, choose an age that you suspect was difficult for you, an age that came to mind during the time machine practice. Find a quiet moment and simply sit with that photograph. Look into the eyes of that child. Do not analyze. Do not judge. Do not try to remember specific events. Just be with them. Notice what feelings arise in your body as you look at them. Tenderness? Sadness? A desire to protect them? This is your own wise adult self, your inner good parent, beginning to stir. You are seeing that child not as a problem or as a shameful past you have outgrown, but as a real, vulnerable being who deserves your love and attention right now. You are, perhaps, for the first time, offering the child a compassionate witness. And that is a profound gift. Pause here for a moment. If you were to see a photo of your 8-year-old self right now, what is the one thing you would want to say to that child? What is the one message of reassurance or love they needed to hear then and still need to hear now? If you feel comfortable, share that one message in the comments. Let us create a wave of compassion for all the children we once were. This leads us to the third practice, journaling as an introduction. This is where we formally open the line of communication. You can use the photo to help you. Look at the child in the picture, and in your journal, write them a letter. But this is not a letter from you. It is a letter to you. You begin with a simple, powerful prompt. Dear little, your name. I am here now. I am grown up, and I am finally ready to listen. What do you need me to know? And then You write. You let whatever comes, come. It might be a single word. It might be an image. It might be a torrent of feelings you have been repressing for decades. Do not censor it. The goal is not to write a beautiful letter. The goal is to listen. To signal to that child that their voice, after all these years of silence, finally matters. That they matter. These three practices, the trigger as a time machine, the photo meditation, and journaling as an introduction, are not about healing the wound today. They are about the crucial first step, the act of recognition, the act of turning towards instead of away. You are rescuing an exiled part of your own soul. And when the adult self begins to listen to and acknowledge the inner child, a miracle happens. The child's desperate, outdated, and self-sabotaging behaviors begin to soften. It no longer has to scream to be heard. And that is the foundation of true emotional regulation. It is the beginning of peace.
So we arrive, not at a destination of healing, but at the beginning of a relationship. The relationship with the child you left behind. Recognizing your inner child is not about dwelling on the past. It is about rescuing an exiled, precious part of your own soul. And in doing so, you begin to understand the map of your own life. The patterns that have haunted you, the fears that have held you captive, the self-sabotaging behaviors that have baffled you, they are not random flaws in your character. They are the language of a child who is trying to speak. A child who is trying to be seen. A child who is trying to feel safe. When your adult self, your wise parent within, finally turns towards this child with compassion, the entire inner landscape begins to shift. The child's desperate, maladaptive behaviors begin to soften. They no longer have to scream to be heard. They no longer have to sabotage your life to get your attention, because they finally have it. They have you. And your presence, your compassionate, non-judgmental presence, is the very thing they have been waiting for their entire life. This is the foundation of true self-compassion. It is the end of the war against your own reactions. It is the beginning of an inner alliance, an alliance between the wise adult you are today and the vulnerable child who holds the keys to your past and to your future joy. So, your work begins not with a grand gesture of fixing yourself. It begins with a small gesture of introduction. I invite you to a quiet, courageous act. Find that photo of yourself as a child, the one we spoke of earlier, and just for a moment today, look at that child not with judgment of who you became, but with simple, open curiosity about who they were. And in the comments below, if you feel comfortable, share one word describing how that felt. Sadness, tenderness, recognition. Let the introduction begin. But once you have found this child, once you have acknowledged their presence and recognized their wound, the most important question of all arises. How do you heal them? How do you, the adult you are today, become the wise, loving, and stable parent that your inner child has always been waiting for? That is not a journey of understanding. It is a journey of action, and it is the beautiful, life-changing art of reparenting. And that is where our journey will take us next.